My first boxing memory was probably just watching me brothers. The three of them all started boxing before me. I didn't want to box as a kid. I wish I could, I wish I could tell you, like, you know, when I won a world title, I wish I could tell you I'd dreamt of this moment since I was a baby. You know, I didn't. I wanted to play football as a kid. And me three brothers all started amateur boxing before me, and then it was mainly just, you know, coming home of a night and them three talking about what they'd done in the gym, and basically, not so much I felt left out, but they knew I'd just been in the street kicking the ball, and like they were talking about who sparred what and what have you. So that's really my first boxing memory, and then obviously, before you know it, I started myself. Yeah, when I became world champion, it was a special feeling because also, you know, at the time, I think I was the first world champion from Liverpool for 23 years. So again, I was the first world champion of me three brothers. I've watched Paul try and fall short. I watched Stephen fall short, and you know, I beat Callum to it. So I got all the accolades, all applauded, and even from like the first Scouse world champion for 23 years. So it was for the selfish reasons, it was, you know, it was great. But again, that's why I always said I wanted to be world champion again, because I cherish it a lot more. I didn't fully cherish and realise how big it was to be world champion, because I was still kind of a street kid, shall we say. Like I say, I won a world title. I was at football the next morning, amateur football, you know. So I think now I would cherish it a lot more if I ever done it again. Yeah, to have four boys, you know, my mum and dad have got 4 boys. All of them are boxers. And then, you know, I think it's a bit of a, not surreal, but it's a one-off. You know, my mum's got 4 sons, all 4 professional boxers. It's not like 2 of them were okay at boxing, 1 was into property and 1 was into construction. You know, all 4 of her boys were amateur boxers and then went on to be professional fighters. And, you know, think over the 25-year span from Paul starting to Callum and was still going on now, you know, the washing she had when 4 of us lived at home. You know, we'd go to the gym, 4 of us would take 4 towels to the gym, 4 sets of training clothes, 4 uniforms, 4 PE kits, you know. And that, people used to laugh when we'd say as kids, my mum's in the laundrette. And it's only when you get older and realise now, when you've got your own washing, how much washing she must have went through. 4 towels a day, 4 sets of training clothes, 4 normal clothes we wore in the day, 4 uniforms, you know, it's a lot of washing. So, yeah, it was one of them. But on the flip side to it, my mum hates it. And my mum's happiest day of her life will be the day me and Callum are finished now, because Paul and Stephen have retired. And the day me and Callum retire, I think will be my mum's happiest day, because she's never been, well, she's been, but she hates it. Which again, I don't think many mothers will like seeing the sons getting punched in the face, but she went to 1 fight with Stephen in the amateurs because I think she was arguing with my dad at the time, so she had to take Stephen. She went to Paul's Commonwealth Games final just to see him get on the podium, and she come to Vegas. But even though I boxed Canelo in Texas, everybody flew to Vegas, and she stayed in Vegas just for me to travel there and see her after it. So she doesn't go, she doesn't watch, even when she knows we've won. If I showed her kind of when I beat Chris, and she doesn't watch any bit of the fight, and as soon as the fight gets stopped, she watches the celebrations, me nephew getting in the ring, me dad, and she loves seeing that, but she just doesn't, you know, I could say, Mum, look, watch this knockout, and she's not interested. Yeah, it's horrendous for me to watch my brothers box. I would rather it me 10 times over. I think you only have to look, there's a couple of clips of me for the Callum's fight in Saudi, and if you see me the next day, I had 2 holes inside my mouth. I do this thing where I'm nervous, like, and I bite the inside of my gum, and obviously the more nervous I am, obviously I think the further I go. And the next day I was in agony, I had a hole inside my mouth. I just get so nervous for my brothers fighting. It's a little bit more, I feel that it's in my control when I box, and I probably know how I'd react to a loss and stuff like that, whereas I don't know how they'll react, and I don't want to see it. So I don't know why, but you know, it's not it's not cliche, it's not tongue-in-cheek. I'm telling you now, I am a lot more nervous when they fight than I am myself. Yeah, I think, when we think of the legacy, I think it will probably be spoke about, maybe remembered a little bit more when the four of us are done. I think there's a lot of things now we can sit here and talk about, and you'd be like, well, I didn't know that, or really, or, how many titles we've won. We held 3 British titles in our house at one time. We probably should have held the 4, but Paul was super middleweight British champion when Callum was English super middleweight champion, so Callum really couldn't hold the title because Paul had it. As soon as Paul vacated the title, Callum was the next champion. So we've had 4 British titles in our house, and I always remember Luke Campbell and Tommy Coyle were fighting to become the first British champion from Hull. And I thought, wow, first British champion from Hull as a city. We had 4 under one roof. And like I say, just touching back on, me and mum had 4 boys, all 4 went on to be British champions. All 4 challenged for world titles. 2 of us won them, 2 fell short, very unlucky. So I also do think, when we're done and we sit back, the places we fought, the bills we topped, the arenas we sold out, I do think it will be spoke about, remembered a little bit more, when we're done, when we're gone. But I don't know how long that's going to be, because we've got a nephew who's just become national champion in the amateurs, Paul's son, who's becoming a very, very, a very good amateur. And yeah, I think he had a lot of pressure. You spoke about pressure. He won his first national title a couple of weeks back and sobbed, cried his eyes out. And I just think the pressure that was off him after he won that title, you could see in his face, because, he's the Smith nephew, he's the Smith's son, he's Paul Smith's son, he's Liam Smith, Callum Smith, Stephen Smith's nephew. People expect him to be great, and it doesn't always work that way, but to see him become national champion again was unbelievable for me, his 2 uncles and his dad, because we know how much that means when you win your first national title. Yeah, I do think I'll stick into boxing, because it's all I know, it's all I've done for, we'll talk about that in a minute, but I've been professional a long time, it's all I know, but I love boxing now. I know I said to you before I didn't want to be a boxer as a young kid, but since I've got into boxing, I love boxing now. I also, more than the 3 brothers, I watch boxing more than Paul, Stephen and Callum. And if they used to get opponents, or my brother Stephen now coaches kids. If he gets offered an opponent, sometimes he'll ring me, Beef, have you seen, and I'll say the kid's name, and I'll go, yeah, I remember him boxing such and such. I do know me boxing, and I'll watch any boxing match. I won't just watch the big names, and I'm like that with football. I'll watch West Ham v Watford, and you say, are you really watching this? It's just what I'm like. I love watching football and love watching boxing now. So I manage a young fighter, Frankie Stringer, at the moment. I've been asked to manage a few more, but I haven't put my name to them yet, because I've still got a little bit of time left myself, and I don't want to shortchange anyone, not give them the time and the effort that they need, because I know the sport we're in. So I'll just stick with Frankie at the moment, and when I'm retired myself, I will probably go into managing. My brother Stephen's a coach, my brother Paul manages fighters. I think I'll probably go into managing. Yeah, I always watched, to learn. Miguel Cotto, he was one I always loved watching, and he was like a fantasy matchup for me at the time. I loved his style. I used to try and box like him as an amateur, which doesn't really make sense. But, he was one I loved watching. Then you had, your Canelos you end up sharing the ring with, and that style I always liked, the fighter style, the Mexican style, the ones who, like to fight, just head body, and not really the boxing purist. So I always liked that style more than the technical side. Yeah, that was a bit of a surreal moment, especially just touching back on, everything. Hindsight's great now. I wish I'd done this, I wish I didn't do this. And, at the time I got a cut after I sparred 16 rounds of sparring over 3 days. Like, I done my first spar, then my next spar, and then on the 3rd day of sparring, 6 weeks out from Canelo, I got cut here on my forehead. And realistically now, should I have went ahead with the fight with no sparring? Probably not, but the type of person I was, I thought I was with me saying before, I was the first world champion from Liverpool. I was also the first to get that big, you know, that huge marquee fight, that huge name. And I remember thinking, like, even touching back on it now, I got absolutely my pants pulled down for the Canelo fight, you know, with money. I never got nowhere near the money I should have got. But I was very green, I was very naive, and I just thought, you know what, I'll beat him. And then I'll name me price for a rematch, because he'll want a rematch. And that's just the attitude I had, and that was the kid I was at the time. And I was convinced, like, yeah, it'll kill him making the weight again, and he won't be able to hurt me, so I'll be able to get to him late. And that was right, that was the mindset I had going into it. So, you know, hypothetically I should have pulled out, but I just thought, right, I'm fighting this star who's coming back down in weight. He just went up to middleweight to win a world title, so he was coming back down to my weight, which was 154. So, yeah, I just thought, obviously it was a privilege and it was an honour after it, but before it, you couldn't have convinced me I was going to lose that fight. Yeah, 100%. You know, I feel I've learned a lot, and, you know, I know the game now. I'm a little bit older, wiser. I've learned a lot off the likes of your Canelos, Munguia, and, you know, I've fought a lot of names over the years, so I feel I've got a lot to pass on to brothers, you know, kids I manage, and yeah, I think I've learned a lot. Yeah, I think Liverpool's played a massive part in the four of our personalities, our personas, and I got a lot of people saying to me now over Callum's fight, you know, we've never been found wanting for heart and, as they say in Liverpool, you know, balls. But, you know, I think Callum showed, he's never had to show that he's got a big heart, but the last fight did tick that box for Callum. You know, we had a war with Joshua Buatsi, and he ticked that box, which no one's seen of Callum. I think I've ticked it, Stephen has, Paul has, we've all been in wars. Callum hasn't been in many wars, and, you know, that fight was a good check for Callum, and, you know, a lot question Callum's desire. If that doesn't answer your question for desire, then I don't know what will. So I think Liverpool's played a big part in that, being brought up in Kirkdale, you know, a rough area. We weren't really, I'm not going to give you, we had nothing as kids. You know, we had a mum and dad who tried the best for us and done everything for us and still do. But we were brought up in a council house on a council estate, a stone throw away from the gym you've just been. And the houses facing the gym where we've just trained are a new built house. So, you know, you can imagine the houses before then, what had to be knocked down. And that was our house. You know, our house is knocked down now and rebuilt as a brand new built house. So, you know, we were brought up, we were looked after, but in a rough area. And you know, my mum will tell you different, but we moved out that area because I was kind of swaying off track. I think boxing's massive, and I know there's been arguments for years over putting it in schools and whatnot. And there's a lot of things, you know, when we see, you know, tragic things happen, but tragic things happen in you know, any form of life. And I seen a quote and I thought, yeah, perfect. You know, boxing saved more lives than it takes, and 100%. And I feel manners, respect, just listening. Yeah, I think boxing is 100% a great way to go for kids. Discipline. I think it should be not drummed into your kid, but I think you know, my kids or my nephews, I don't want them to box, but I want them to go into a boxing gym because, and also, you know, you meet some of the best people in your life. Some of my best friends now, I have my phone because through boxing. I met through boxing. So, yeah, I would, you know, I'd advise it to anyone to get the kids into a boxing gym, if it's just for fitness or if it's for the discipline side to it, because, you know, it works wonders. Yeah, like I said before, you know, with the boxing situation, it's all I've known, it's all I want to do at the moment. And I've still got the fire to be involved in the big fight. I still want to challenge for a world title again. And like I said, it's a little bit easy now to judge me on the Chris Eubank Jr. rematch. Before the Chris Eubank first fight, you know, I was getting talked about on the best middleweight in the world, and I fought Chris on the back of a horrendous injury, which, again, hindsight, I was never ever going to be ready for. Me being the person I was, I thought, you know what, as long as I make weight, I'll knock him out again. It didn't go that way, but it also didn't mean to say I'm a finished fighter. And I just think now, you know, this fight, it doesn't matter who I was fighting. I've got a lot of fire in my belly to prove to the people who thought I'm finished, the people who are saying I'm finished, you know, prove them wrong, prove to a lot of people that, you know, I'm still the Liam Smith of old. I'm still the best middleweight in Britain. And, you know, I think given the time and the opportunity, I'll prove that. Yeah, it's massively frustrating, that part of boxing, but that's the game we're in. It comes with the territory, and, you know, you see people who, look, I know people who have been like that. As soon as you put a camera in front of them, take the camera away from them, they're a total different person, and they know exactly what they're doing. But then you've also got, you know, the two fighters topping this bill are getting absolute fortunes on the back of the dad's name, basically. You know, Chris, more so than Conor, has done a little bit on his four bigger names. Conor has done really, you know, nothing to warrant the pay that he's getting, put it that way. But they've been blessed that the fathers were great fighters. The fathers had a rivalry, and it's passed on to them too. So, touching what you're saying, yes, but I don't need to be like that. And again, I've got respect, I've got morals, and if you push me, put me into a corner, or if I need to do something or say something, I'll say it. You know, I'm not going to shy away from anything, but yeah, I don't need to do anything for clout or anything for a camera in front of me. You know, take the camera away. If I had something to say to you, I'll say it to you. But this fight for me is just more about winning. Again, I'm not going to, once I beat Darren, I'll be very vocal. You know, I'll call the names out I need to call out, but as of yet, I just need to win, because I start mentioning names now, it gives people a green light, it gives them a, you know, a pass to say kind of like fuck him, he hasn't boxed for 18 months or whatever it may be, how long I've been out the ring for. So, you know, I had a bad year after losing to Chris, having to pull out of the Josh Kelly fight, but, you know, fingers crossed, 2 weeks time I'm back and I'll be back with a win. My favourite performance, I've got a load of, like, you know, not bittersweet ones, sweet ones, one that meant more, become a world champion, and even just like the commentary around it, you know, when I won the title, Liam Smith, the champion of the world, blah, blah, blah. That was a special achievement, but I should have milked that more. I didn't really, I didn't know how big it was. I was still kind of a young rag-ass kid, and I didn't cherish it as much as I should. You know, I went home that night, I was at football the next morning, and it was just back to a cafe Monday morning, and I didn't really realise how big it was to be world champion. I was just a little, not green again, but, you know, I should have cherished it more. Then I've had the likes of you know, Anthony Fowler in Liverpool at the Scouse Derby, that I was hugely backed in favour of. You know, I thought it was going to be split. So that was a sweet one. The Chris Eubank Jr. first fight, when kind of no one thought I could hit him with a headshot. And I told them all week, don't be fooled that Chris can't be here with a headshot, and then all of a sudden I stop him with a headshot. So yeah, another sold out Manchester Arena with 90% in my favour. So I've had some good ones. It's hard to put my finger on the great one, the best one. You know, Canelo, I walked out at the Dallas Cowboy Stadium with 50,000 Mexicans. Again, you think that'd be scary, but it was special. Yeah, we've always had pressure on us since Paul started boxing, and the pressure then went on to Stephen when Stephen started, then Callum, and then obviously myself. And the pressure come from amateur days. You know, Paul become national champion, Stephen become national champion, then I become national champion. Then there was a lot of pressure on Callum. Callum done it, obviously. Paul went on to fight for England, so did Stephen, so did me, so did Callum. And it just ventured on, but also being how close we are as a four. Again, that's not for cameras. You take the cameras away, you know, we're still the same. We're very close. We see each other every day, and it feels like, I said to you before how nervous I get for Callum, Paul and Stephen. It feels like I'm fighting. So when I eventually come to a challenge for a British title, challenge for a world title, I felt like I'd been here before. It wasn't new to me. It wasn't like foreign and like, wow, do we really do that when you challenge for a world title? I'd seen and witnessed this before with Paul and Stephen, so it's all really pressure, but also helped us, you know, along the way, because we've always felt we've been in them situations before. It wasn't new, you know what I mean? And like I said, it was new then for me to fight in the Dallas Cowboy Stadium. Then Callum fought at Tottenham's ground, so that wasn't, you know, a crazy feeling for him, because he'd been in a big stadium like that before with me. And then it holds pressure to a certain extent, but I think we've come to deal with it now that, you know, win or lose, we've made our own, you know, we've made our own circle and we've made our own legacy, really. I think boxing coaches are so important, you know, in boxing. They can do so many camps that you're all, you know, as many camps as you want, but they earn their money at that 1 minute. At the end of the round, they have 1 minute to tell you what's going on, what you need to do, and what they think is going to work. Now, it doesn't always necessarily work, and from the outside, it's different when you get in, but they need to give their best advice for you in that 1 minute, and that's where every good coach earns their money, in that 1 minute in between rounds. And, you know, for me, next time round, my coach has got, you know, 12 1 minutes at the end of each round to get me over the line. Basically, I've got to carry out what he wants to do, what he tries to do. We've got to try it. If it doesn't work, then the fighter's got to adapt. But, you know, coaches play a huge part in fighters' careers. Happy fighters are good fighters, you know, in and around gyms. So, but you need, you know, a good man, a cool head in a hot kitchen. It's the old saying, you know, we can be the away fighter in a, touching back on that, 50,000 seater stadium, you know, but at the end of that 1 minute, you need a calm coach to get across his point in your ear. The advice I'd give, obviously, for coming back from setbacks would just be, you know, give everything. If you've got that, you know, 1 foot out the door, shall we say, then bring your other foot with you. But if you've still got that fire in your belly, then you just give everything you've got. And, you know, no one can ever slag you. No one can ever question your, you know, your enthusiasm. You know, if you wanted it bad enough, you'll do it. And I feel if you want it bad enough, 9 times out of 10, you will do it. And no one can ever knock you for that. And, you know, I've had the same questions asked for me since, like I say, since I boxed Anthony Fowler. People the saying, you've reached the top, is it his turn to take over and whatever else. And that's the same now with Aaron McKenna. You know, people think I'm done off the back of the Chris Eubank Jr. rematch. Aaron's ready to step up, and like I say, take the hair out of it. I'm still a young fighter. You know, I had one bad injury for the Chris Eubank Jr. rematch. It hasn't made me a bad fighter overnight. It hasn't put miles on the clock. And I just think it's time for myself to prove that now. And like I said before, I touched on Callum, the desire. You touched on what I've done in boxing. I could retire tomorrow and be a happy man. I could have retired after winning a British title and being buzzing, proud of myself, because I didn't set out to do this. I didn't want to do this as a kid. I've achieved 1,000,000 times more than I ever set out to in boxing. So I can retire a happy man. It's not easy getting out of bed. It's not easy making weight. It's not easy getting yourself fit. So it's not easy coming back off the injury I've come back off either. So if that doesn't tell you how much desire I've got, then I can't really change your mind on what you think of me. So, you know, you judge me for yourself, but I think I'll show you April 26th.
Live on DAZN Worldwide, April 26th, Eubank Jr. versus Ben. Buy now at DAZN.com/boxing.